All right. Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Tips for Avoiding Burnout. Today's presenter is Dr. Larry Iverson. Dr. Iverson is a psychologist, author, keynote speaker, and executive coach. During his career, he has personally coached or trained more than 1 million people. And now for some brief housekeeping. The session is being recorded, and we will post a link to the recording on our webpage when it's available. Please visit cpshr.us to view this recording and our other past webinars. In order to ensure a high quality recording, all attendees are encouraged to mute your mics. If you have any questions for Dr. Iverson, please go ahead and enter them in the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation as time allows. And now, let's get started.
Hello, everybody. A little bit about where this program came from. As Angelique said, I am a clinical psychologist, been in private practice for nearly 40 years. And when I was beginning my practice, I spent a ton of time studying and researching stress, pressure, burnout, compassion fatigue. Anyhow, one thing led to another. So I have been doing programs on this for many a year. So let's get started here and talk about really what's going on. Now, burnout, compassion fatigue are really about caring. They happen because of caring. Seems like that wouldn't be the case, but it is. So experiencing burnout or compassion fatigue does not mean you did something wrong. Absolutely does not mean you did something wrong. It does not mean you are not psychologically as strong as someone else. Burnout and compassion fatigue only happen to those individuals who care. They care. They care about helping others. They care about being a quality leader. They care about doing a good job. They care about people. If you did not have this caring about your family, your friends, your job, that interaction, you would never have to be concerned about experiencing compassion fatigue or burnout. Either one wouldn't happen. So if you are someone who it really matters to do quality, whether it's family or work, you set yourself up to some degree just by that to have this happen to you. So burnout, let's start off by definition. So burnout is a syndrome of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personal accomplishment among individuals who do people working of some kind. People working. Do you work with other people? Are you a manager? Do you experience working within a team? Do you serve clients? By that alone, it sets you up to experience burnout. So there really are three kinds of burnout: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, reduced personal accomplishment. Emotional exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion is how used up you feel. It is how drained you feel at the end of the day. If you've ever been working really hard and at the end of the day, it's just like you're so tired, just worn out. That is emotional exhaustion. That's what it feels like. So emotional exhaustion. Depersonalization. Depersonalization is where we begin to turn people into objects. Now, one of the fields that tends to do that more than anything is law enforcement. Why? If you think about what law enforcement does by its nature, let's say you have to go to someone's house and arrest them. Would you rather go arrest someone who's a perpetrator? Or would you rather arrest someone who is the sole provider of a family of 6? Right? You depersonalize. Why? It takes the individual personal chunks out of it. So depersonalization happens to all of us. Sometimes we have to kind of hold people back so that we can just keep ourselves okay. And the third kind of burnout is reduced personal accomplishment. What that means is that you don't feel very good about what's going on with your work anymore. That the joy, the feeling of accomplishment isn't happening much. So we need to think about with that, how do we make that happen? How do we not have emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, reduced personal accomplishment? Well, there's a number of things we can actually do about it. Some of those people who are most at risk for experiencing burnout, those new to the field of people working. If you are daily dealing with other people, helping them solve problems, getting engaged, giving direction to, supervising, interacting with, this is likely to happen. Those who've experienced personal trauma of some kind, if you've had a trauma in any part of your life, it sets you up to experience burnout as a result of having had that personal trauma. That personal trauma kind of sets you on edge to make it happen. We see this happen a lot with people like doctors and nurses, incident management team members, fire, police, happens a ton. Those who interact with lots of clients and coworkers. My guess is that every one of you on this call do that on a regular basis, especially during the pandemic. This is becoming more and more prominent where we have all of these interactions continually. We're on Zoom or on WebEx or we're having phone calls and we're having all these interactions one after the other, and then people crowd together and then we go apart and we, right? I mean, it happens. Working long hours, working long hours. If you are putting in a ton of time, now, working long hours doesn't mean just the hours you're sitting in front of your computer or in the meetings. You carry it around with you. At night, you go, oh, yeah, I just tomorrow I've got to remember to do this. You ever do that? Or over the weekend, you'll be going through the weekend and go, oh man, on Monday, I've got to remember. That is extending your work life. That is extending your work hours. Those with a history of burning out, if you've ever burned out at something, it sets you up to have you happen again. Those who have trouble communicating what they are feeling and experiencing, if you know someone or if you're someone who has a really tough time talking about what's going on with you, it sets you up to burn out. Why? Because we are social creatures. One of the difficult parts of this pandemic that we're going through is this social distancing. What it really ought to be called is physical distancing. We need to still be socially connected, even though we are physically distancing. But if you're somebody who has a hard time talking about what you're feeling and what's going on with you, that in and of itself can wear you down just because you don't have a release. Or those people with inadequate personal support systems. Now, we need to have that support system both at work and at home, both, not just one or the other, but both. We have to have people we can connect with both personally and professionally. Why? We spend so much time working that if you don't have people there you can relate to and interact with and discuss things with that you feel good about, you're spending a major chunk of your life in sort of hostile territory. So we need to have that support system, both personally and professionally. Now, thinking about that, there are really only 4 ways known to medicine and psychology that emotions are created. 4. Chemical or hormonal changes in the body, damage to the brain or central nervous system, self-talk and mental images you create, and something happening to your body, something happening to your physiology. So let's take them one at a time. Chemical or hormonal changes in the body. Well, everything you put in your body is a chemical, is it not? Coffee, tea, sugar, water, alcohol, drugs, food, everything you put in your body is a chemical and affects you on some level. Hormones. You have more than 30 hormones in your body that cause your emotions to rise and fall, to fluctuate up and down. Very normal. We all go through it. And hormones get used up, they have to be rebuilt. You feel drained sometimes. When you get ill, certain ones come to the fore, other ones get depressed, right? So chemical hormonal change. Number 2, damage to the brain or central nervous system. Damage to the brain or central nervous system. I guarantee you, if you were to stand 15 feet away from a brick wall and you were to lower your head and run headfirst into a brick wall, it's going to change how you feel rapidly. It's going to change how you feel rapidly, right? Get hit in the head with a baseball, put your head through the windshield of a car, even just bump your head hard, and it can shake your brain up. Today, a major study is on what's called uh, CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. CTE is something they began to study with boxers and with football players because they get their heads keep bump, 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 bump. They find they have brain problems later. Well, it also happens with baseball players, basketball players, soccer players who love to jump up and hit that hard little ball with their heads. Shakes the brain up. You do that enough, and over time, it creates things. Now, in 1982, I worked with the 12 boxers on the US Olympic boxing team. They hired me to work with them. What I found was after those boxers would have a bout, for anywhere from 3 days to maybe 2 weeks, they found there was very little emotional stability. They'd be happy and everything's just fine. Then all of a sudden, for no reason, nothing had changed, they'd get angry. And that would last for a while, and then they'd be happy again. And then for no reason, they'd start feeling sad. And then kind of apathetic. And it was like, whoa. As I was observing this happening, I hadn't really thought about it much, but they shook the brain up. So chemical or hormonal change in the body, damage to the brain. The third is your own self-talk. It is the thoughts in your brain. It's the images you create. It's what you're thinking. It's your thinking patterns. So those thinking patterns that you have going on, you've got to monitor them. You've got to make sure you're directing them where you want to go. The fourth way is something happening to your physiology. You're way too hot. You're way too cold. You're physically injured. You're in pain. Something has occurred. Now, with these four ways, all emotions are created. Of the four ways, chemical or hormonal change in the body, damage to the brain, your self-talk and mental images you create, and something happening to your physiology, medicine and psychology have proved that at least 65 to 75% or more of our emotions are the result of number three, your thinking pattern, your self-talk, what's going on inside of your own head. Not because you're chemically imbalanced, not because somebody beat you in the head with a board, not because somebody twisted you up in a pretzel and put you in a freezer for a half a day, but because of what you're thinking about. So stress, pressure, burnout, compassion fatigue, those things, one of the biggest generators of all of that is your self-talk. Now, this is a little model of thinking processes. Whenever something happens in the world around you, I will call that thing at point A an experience, an action of some kind. You have a choice as to what you're going to think. You can tell yourself upsetting things or calming things. It's a choice. It's a choice. What we know is that burnout is the result, at least in part, a significant part, because of telling yourself disturbing or upsetting thoughts. I'll talk about that in detail in a moment. So if you're telling yourself your beliefs and self-talk down at B minus, down in the bottom part, if your thoughts and talk down there are angry thoughts, you're at C minus, your consequences, emotional feelings, and so on, you'll feel angry. If you tell yourself scary things, you'll feel afraid. If you tell yourself shameful things, you'll feel guilty or embarrassed. If you tell yourself sad things, you'll feel down or despondent. Conversely, if you tell yourself up at B plus, if you tell yourself self-talk that is silly, you get some humor out of it. You tell yourself things that are exciting and passionate, you feel motivated. You tell yourself that are relaxing and calming, you feel more at peace. Most of the time, we feel how we feel, not because we were chemically or hormonally imbalanced, not because we were brain damaged, not because something happened to our body, but because of what we're telling ourselves. It is our own self-talk. Burnout is largely influenced by your thinking patterns. For example, have you ever felt pressure at work? Have you ever become tense when working? Have you ever felt like it was negative around where you were? See, a lot of that stuff going on that is happening inside your head. No, my boss pressures me all the time. hmm Okay, so what does your boss do? Your boss comes up and says some words to you, and you translate those words inside of your head into pressure. When he comes up and says, "So, how soon are you going to have this done?" Or she, in your mind, you go, "I'm not moving fast enough. I got to do this faster. I got to get it done. I got to get it done now. This is the problem. What's wrong? You translate those words into self-talk, which creates pressure. Burnout, most of the time, is a result of your own negative self-talk coming back on you from something you've either seen or experienced from someone else. Burnout. And again, remember, people only burn out who care about doing a good job. So if your boss came up to you and said, "So when are you going to have this done?" And you go, "Who cares? I'll get it done when I get it done." If that's your thinking pattern, you feel no pressure whatsoever. But if on the other hand, you go, "Well, I wonder if I have to get it done even sooner than they want. I mean, I was hoping to get it done next week, but I don't know if I'll have it done. What, will they be mad at me? What if there's a problem?" You create that tension, pressure that happens that literally can burn you out over time. See, burnout happens over an extended period of time normally. It's not a one-time event, it's an overtime event. So one of the things we must learn to do is that when some of that thinking starts up, there's nothing wrong with feeling afraid. There's nothing wrong with getting angry. There's nothing wrong with feeling sad. There's not. That's normal. If you didn't have that, you would not be a normal human being. But you do not want to live there. You absolutely do not want to live there. Because if you did, over time, it will take an effect on you, which is absolutely detrimental to your mental and to your physical health. So if you find yourself there, you need to slow down, take a breath, and start listening. Pay attention to what you're telling yourself. How badly are you scaring yourself? Right? I mean, that scare comes out of what I'm thinking, what I'm telling myself, what's going on inside of my own mind. Yes, I know that there are people who pressure. Yes, there are people who give you a hard time. Yes, there are negative people. Yes, you have deadlines you have to live up to. So why, if you have two people working side by side, they have the same job, they're doing the same kind of work, they have the same basic education, they have the same knowledge base, they have similar skills. Why does one person do the job and every day just feels absolutely passionate, excited, loving the job, and the other person feels pressured, tense, stressed out, can hardly take it? Why? Because of what's going on up here. It's because of what they're telling themselves about that work they're doing. There is not one of us who has not done that. I've done it. You've done it. Everybody you've worked with has done it. Why? Because you care about doing a good job, because you want to meet those commitments and deadlines, because it's important to you to have value and to create value and bring value to the people you're interacting with. It's important to have that happen. But a major piece of what we need to do is we need to manage our self-talk. Got to get a handle on that thinking brain of yours. Don't let it run away with you, right? If you find yourself making yourself nuts, you got that pressure going on, back up a little bit. Back up, say, okay, yeah, I get it. It's got to be done. It's got to be done soon. Am I going to hit the target? Yeah, I'm probably going to hit the target. Good. So is it going to help me to feel more pressure in hitting that target? Probably not. Brain research has actually pretty well shown that the more pressure we feel, the slower our brain engages and works. A little bit of pressure, good thing. Too much pressure slows the brain down. So finding a way to chill yourself a bit is really crucial to avoiding getting burned out. Now, in I do a program called Overcoming Compassion, Fatigue, and Avoiding Burnout. In that program, I talk about at least 30 to 40 things that promote burnout happening to you. And I talk about what you can do about them so that they don't take an effect. But I want to talk for just a moment about what some of those promoters are. One of them is involvement with people. Now, time demands. We all have time demands, right? I mean, when you are given an assignment, they normally don't say, okay, I want you to do this, and just whenever you kind of get around to it, just go ahead and do it. Doesn't really matter, just anytime. Is that what they normally tell you when you have some work to do? I don't think so. We all need deadlines. If you don't have deadlines, it's kind of like it's too nebulous. You can just kind of never get around to it sometimes. You have any of those things at home you wanted to do, but you always, I'll do it sometime. But that's been going on for years now. You ever have any of those? So time demands, the pressures we feel from outside can sometimes do that. Supporter for the need of others. If you're a manager, if you are a lead in some way, if you are a team member who has to interact with other people, if you are a supporter of clients and customers or people who come to you for work to be done, you're a supporter for the need of others. And that involvement can generate that tension and pressure we're talking about that can lead to burnout. Negative coworkers, managers. Have you ever had to work with somebody who's always negative? Don't you love it? Hopefully you're not one of them. That absolutely can take a toll on your attitude. Why? Because it always keeps this fog over your brain. This person's always whining and complaining about something, right? I mean, we all sometimes have to let it out. But working with sad Sam or negative Nancy is not the most fun you ever had, right? I mean, go in there. A second promoter of burnout is the job setting itself. If there is a values or beliefs conflict you have to put up with, it can absolutely take a toll on you. Yale University, this was probably, I don't know, it's probably 15, maybe even 20 years ago now. They did a research study doing free exit interviews for any government agency or corporation, and they did this for 5 years. And they did thousands upon thousands of exit interviews for people leaving their jobs. What they found was that those people who were leaving their jobs who did not already have another job set up that was as good or better job than they already had, 87% of those people leaving were leaving because there was a conflict between what they valued, what they believed in, their work ethic, and the organization they were working in, and they couldn't take it any longer. 87%, right? If you have that values and beliefs conflict, it'll toast you over time. If you're the person who has to do the dirty work. There's a good friend of mine who is the fire chief for the city of Spokane in the state of Washington. His name is Brian Schaefer. Brian was hired by a department, not Spokane, but another department, to come in to roll heads. The department was ineffective, they were inefficient, budgets were always blown, they just couldn't do things. So he came in, straightened out the organization, laid off some people, demoted some people, hired other, fired other people. I mean, it just, anyhow, over a period of a year, it just, he said it ripped him up. He could hardly stand doing it, but that was what he was hired for. That's what he did. He was an assistant chief. Also, what he found is that over the time of doing that, he could feel this negativity generated at him from all these people. He would just, it was like almost like he could feel. You ever felt like somebody was watching you? He said the whole time he was at that department for 1 year, he said it felt like somebody was always watching him because he was the bad guy. He had to do the dirty work. If you work in an stressful environment, the working conditions themselves, the lighting, the air quality, or perhaps just the pressures of the job, stressful environment. And another time is if there's little collaboration. Now, we really need to have that connection with other people. We need to be able to collaborate. That's why we have teams, right? We can work together, we can collaborate, we can make things happen. So little collaboration. So two of the promoters, involvement with people, getting the job setting itself. The third is personal characteristics. These are your habits. If you don't have a good personal and professional support system, it can absolutely take a toll on you. Absolutely. We need to have people we can talk to. You don't have to be best friends. Work is not necessarily a love-in like back in the 60s in San Francisco, but it's nice to have people you can at least communicate with, people who are intelligent that you can bounce things off of, that can assist you if you're saying, I don't quite understand this. You have somebody you can talk to and say, oh, let me help you out. I got this. They explain it to you in a way you get it. That support system can make a difference. And your personal support system, your family members, your good friends, your neighbors, the people around you who encourage you and support you and spend time with you. Negative self-talk. I said that a moment ago. That negative self-talk thing, that is one of the worst. That is one of the worst. Between 60 to 75% or more of your emotions are generated by negative self-talk. So you've got to catch it. You've got to watch what's going on inside of your brain. You got to pay attention. Also, a lack of clear goals. You don't have to be the biggest goal setter in the world, but we need goals. We need personal goals. We need professional goals. We have things we need to take care of. You need to have goals for your physical health. You need to have goals for your career. You need to have goals for your family. You need to have goals for your hobbies. You need to have goals in all parts of your life. What we know is that those people who have goals in many parts of their life, not just one, tend to be happier, go longer, have more fun, feel more resilient. Why? Because you have some balance. So some of the things promote burnout. Some of the things we can do to avoid burning out, and again, this is just a few of many that I talk about in the program. Personal, things you can do personally. You need to take little breaks. Walk away for a bit. I did a study with a accounting firm here in the Seattle area. I'm in Seattle. Did an accounting firm here in the Seattle area. They called me up and said, production is off. We don't know why. Nothing has really changed. Our work is basically the same. Production is just off, and we can't figure out why. Just nothing's really making a difference. So could you come in and do some training to help us increase productivity? And I said, sure, I can do that. So I went in and I interviewed a couple of the owners of the company, some of the staff. Anyhow, what I figured out is that they spent all of their days basically staring at paperwork or staring at computer screens or whatever, and they never moved. Well, in the center of the office was a big grandfather clock. And so I had this little meeting with everybody. I said, I'm going to come in and do some trainings with you in a couple of weeks, but right now, here's what I want you to do. Every day, this clock, every hour bongs on the hour, right? And everybody goes, yeah. I said, when that clock goes off, what I want you to do is I want you to stand up for 1 minute. Just get out of your chair, bounce up and down on your toes, shake your body a little bit, take some deep breaths, just walk around for 1 minute, sit back down, go to work. Well, they tried that, and I made it so that everybody had to remind everybody else. So if the clock went off and somebody was still sitting, they could see them say, "Hey, get out of your chair!" I mean, they literally would yell at each other. Everybody get up. It became a game, kind of. By the end of that first month, productivity was up 14%. The owner of the company calls me and he goes, "Wow, I don't know if it's that silly thing everybody doing, but productivity's up. What could it be?" I said, "It could be that. So do it again for another month." He goes, "Well, I'll try that." So they did it for another month. Productivity stayed at 14%. I said, okay, have them stop doing that. So he came through and said, this is ridiculous. Nobody do that anymore. Productivity took a nosedive. Moving your body wakes up your brain, gets your body going. So take a little stretch every hour, 1 minute, maybe a little more, get your body up, get your brain going, get your body going. Don't take things so personally. It is hard when somebody goes, you blah, 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 blah. And they may be generically talking about your department, but they happen to be in front of you and they go, you. It's really not easy to not take that personally, but you gotta. Why? Because it will help you to be able to break free of that. It's not you necessarily. Learn relaxation techniques. Got to find some things to do to get yourself to chill a bit, right? Deep breathing, yoga, meditative processes, deep relaxation stuff is good for both the brain and the body and will help you retain mental clarity much longer through your life. I can prove it. Social organizational approaches. Learn how to say no. If you're one of those people who always says yes, learn how to say no or say yes. Oftentimes what we have is we have so much going on, we keep turning down things. Well, some of those things are reinforcing for you. You need to learn to say yes to some of those instead of just turning them all away. Avoid off-time spillover into your personal life. It's not good. Work still will be there when you get back. Even if you don't do it at home, it'll still be there. Enhance communication skills. Become better at talking to people. Take some training that helps you learn how to communicate more effectively. Give time or energy to something worthwhile, whether that is volunteering, whether it is family, whether it is helping somebody. I live in a small townhouse complex, and many of the people that live around us are quite old. And so those of us who are not tend to help out the older folks. Number one, they just love us. And number two, it makes you feel good when you get out there and help this little old lady who's got weeds overcoming her garden bed, or this old guy, and you get those things out. It takes you an hour of time to do it, but it makes the environment for both them and you more beautiful. Do something, make a contribution. These things we're talking about, you can do every one of these. You can avoid these things that get in your way, right? You can do some of these things, get out of the way of those. And you can do these things to help yourself and the people around you. Comes with the territory. Now, there's a program that I do for CPS HR. Actually, I do this program across the nation. I have 3 of these booked in the next couple of weeks that I'm doing. Overcoming Compassion Fatigue and Avoiding Burnout. I'm doing it March 16th for CPS HR. It gives you in-depth background on what causes compassion fatigue and what causes burnout to happen and the differences between them. We also talk about some of the symptoms, physical, behavioral, psychological, and how you can notice those so you better take care of yourself. I give people who attend this program, you take 3 evaluation instruments. One is for evaluating your level of burnout. One is for evaluating secondary traumatic stress, and if you have some of that going on. And the other is for just looking at the regular stress in your life. You're going to get multiple strategies to overcome all the stuff we talked about for compassion fatigue and burnout. And I'm going to give you multiple self-care tips that will help you walk away so that you not only understand it better when we're done, but you absolutely can use it. Take these ideas I just put out today and apply them. Begin to use them today. They're to your benefit, right? Make them come alive. Make them come alive. Angelique, any input?
No, that was awesome. Thank you very much. I did just put a registration link in the chat if anybody's interested in learning some more about the upcoming Overcoming Compassion Fatigue and Avoiding Burnout course. So you can find more info there. I want to thank Dr. Iverson for all of his insight and handy tools for avoiding burnout. And thank everyone again for joining us this morning. And we hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Friday and a fantastic weekend. So thank you again. And Dr. Lair, we did have one question, but
Sure.
just wanted to thank everybody. And yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
perfect. All
What's the
right.
question?
So the question is, burnout is not the same as compassion fatigue, correct?
It is not the same as compassion fatigue. There is primary stress and there is primary traumatic stress and secondary traumatic stress. Primary traumatic stress are things like primary traumas. You get in a car wreck. Acute stress, where something happens to your body and you're physically injured. Intergenerational historical trauma that can occur. So those are examples of primary traumatic stress. There are really only two kinds of secondary traumatic stress that we're familiar with. One is compassion fatigue, and the other is burnout. They are both secondary traumatic stress. Burnout happens really over time. Compassion fatigue happens really fast in short periods of time. And so the program is about how you deal with each of those. What do you do so that if some of that short-term stuff is getting you, how you manage it? And if you have some of that long-term stuff going on, what do you do to manage that? And they're different, but both of them are secondary traumatic stress, both burnout and compassion fatigue, but they're different.
Awesome. Thank you for that explanation. Hopefully that was helpful to the attendee who asked. And it is 11:32, so we just wanted to thank you all again. And feel free to take a look at our webinar page on our website, and you will find the recording for this webinar and other past webinars.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Veronica, for your comment. And everybody, yeah, have an awesome day.